those of you on the Grenada Broadcasting Network YouTube channel, and those of you on GBN channel 7, 11, and 20. So happy you can join us this morning. This morning's program, we are going to continue a discussion that has been happening for the past few months, actually. Coronavirus, aka COVID-19, or should I say COVID-19, aka coronavirus. In studio with me is Acting Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Francis Martin, and a little later we're expecting another official to join us, but until then we'll start the discussion this morning. Morning, Doc.
Good morning.
Morning, co-host. I should call it co-host.
Yes, yes. By now I've earned my seat here.
I agree. Well, Doc, let's get right into it. What's the latest with COVID? We just had an address by the Prime Minister on Tuesday night. He revealed 20 million allocation, some other information. What's the latest with Grenada's fight to keep it out of the spice aisle?
Our latest is that we're continuing our fight. We're continuing to protect our borders by ensuring that our systems at our port and airport continues to be robust. And because our systems at the port and airport is robust, that in itself has created some bit of uneasiness. And I suppose we're going to get into those easiness as the days go, as the program progresses. The quarantining of passengers of interest is continuing. We're doing it at all levels. We are ready for our first case in the event that a first case happens. And most likely a first case will happen because of what we see happening worldwide. We are continuing our process for equipping ourselves even more because we really don't know the full extent. So the discussions and purchasing of the necessary equipment and supplies is continuing at the moment. So we're ready to start. We're ready to treat patients if they come. But we're continuing to work on adding more to our arsenal in the event that we would need more of those. So it's nothing more to add except to say that we're continuing doing what we've already said we're doing. We're continuing our process. We're continuing to bolster our staff in relation to what's going on. So basically that's it. Except to say that the numbers in quarantine are increasing.
How much are we up to now?
We're probably about 14 or so in total. Not all of them are there now because some have been released.
Okay.
But we're about 14 or 15, somewhere around there.
And there's a mix of nationalities, yes? Absolutely.
A mix of nationalities. We have, a mix of nationalities. Without getting into specifics, we have, and the nationalities has to do with the 5 locations that we have extended surveillance on. So South Korea, Japan, Italy, Iran, Singapore, and of course China.
Okay. All right. One of the latest happening is the purchase of the equipment and our ability to do the tests in Grenada.
Right, yes. We are very, very fortunate that we are in a position. We have formally requested and purchased our equipment to be on its way. And by the way, you're going to be the first to hear this, that in about 2 weeks, we were told in about 2 weeks it will arrive.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So let's hope.
Fingers crossed, because you know how these things with international travel and trade and so on, if that's affected, it may just affect that as well. But I'm just happy that we're at least on our way for doing so.
Okay. As it relates to the tests, one of the, discrepancy? I read a report online that said the results from tests for COVID-19 usually takes between 24 and 48 hours.
Right.
And then there was another report, an appearance on Beyond the Headlines, I believe, where it was said the tests that we would conduct in Grenada would take 4 hours to get results.
Correct, yeah. The machine that it's a PCR machine, which should help us not only to test for COVID, but influenza A as well, which is something I've always mentioned about influenza.
Right.
The turnaround time is about 4 hours.
So how come we have such advanced equipment compared to I think it was CAFA.
Well, no, it's different technology.
Okay.
Different technology. I mean, the issue of testing kits, and by the way, the whole idea of testing kits, there is still not as sensitive or not as specific. The PCR machine is the most advanced machine for testing that kind of virus, and this is what we're trying to achieve.
Okay. And will we be able to facilitate conducting tests for other islands?
We should be able to do so. And the OECS, we have a wonderful way of collaborating with each other. So we should be able to once we get it. It's just a matter of us, collaborating with one another should the event arrive. But But Dominica, because Dominica has built a new lab and outfitted a new lab, they actually was able to get a mission ahead of us in the other OECS. And that is simply because they're doing that. We're in the process of transitioning our lab from where it is now to the new location. So kind of, we're in that sort of a transition period as well.
So it'll be ready for when the equipment gets here in 2 weeks?
Yes, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to tell us where that lab would be, or you want to keep it secret location?
No, some things you could get secret and others.
Fair enough.
This is fine. This lab is going to be in the new phase 2 of the building.
Okay.
Of General Hospital.
Okay. Just just in case. Let me see. I'm trying to recall some of the information and news that I've heard that maybe you can clear up for us. One has to do with a cruise ship passenger who reportedly disembarked a cruise ship yesterday and had respiratory symptoms, which caused scare last night. Now I remember the story, right? On the taxi stand, and the taxi drivers were scared to transport the individual to the hospital and so on and so forth. Is there any truth to that?
I can understand the fear and the skepticism, because anybody now with respiratory problems coming from a ship, it would scare anyone, and that's fine. People are supposed to be scared and be concerned. I hope that they use the fear to do the right thing, though. In this particular instance, this particular passenger was a passenger who disembarked normal, no problem, went on to do his tour and enjoy the scenes of Grenada, but had an incident in one of the waterfalls and had to dive in under the water. And that created a little bit of difficulty with breathing and coughing and that kind of thing. So it was purely a case like that where he had an incident at the waterfall. But of course, in this time now, anybody in a ship with respiratory issues, of course, is going to create an issue. So we managed it in the right way and followed our protocol and managed it. We had to ensure that individual posed no risk to us. So to me, the issue wasn't really the respiratory symptoms, but the issue was, is he from an area that we are surveillance under?
Right.
And that is what was mattered to me. And this is why the hold up was. Because I said, yes, I understand the symptoms. It's easy to treat. We're accustomed treating people with shortness of breath that comes from a ship. That's not an issue. But in this current scenario, shortness of breath is not any shortness of breath anymore.
Right.
We got to establish. So hold on to that patient, that traveler. Let us ensure that we're comfortable that that traveler did not come from an area of expanded surveillance. And once we were able to do that and certify that he had posed no risk to us, then he was taken on board at the hospital and treated and discharged.
So what was the protocol from the time he started to experience the shortness of breath and the time that he, the ministry intervened and brought him to the hospital? What was he held somewhere or?
Generally on the ship, these ships have very, very
so he
robust.
was on the ship?
Yeah, he was on the ship.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a matter of speaking with the physicians to ensure that, he's fine, it's not a problem, and then you take him on board.
Okay, and he's been able to return to the ship and...
Yes, fine.
Okay, right.
Because, we've done this so many times before, but just because now corona is in the air, everything now is out in the open, which is kind of... As a physician, I don't really like doing that because there's a confidentiality issues of patients, but I do understand the sensitivity of it and how the country feels, and so I have to give out some information that under normal circumstances I wouldn't want to give out.
Understood, correctly understood.
Yeah.
As it relates to, people are still concerned about passengers or cruise ships docking. We've seen a lot of cruise ships turned away from various countries around the world.
Right.
They're still concerned that they continue to come to Grenada, even though we've turned away, we turned away a flight. But yes, people are still concerned with the cruise ships coming to Grenada. Any plans to step up on our restrictions of the cruise ships, or are we just still continuing on the protocol that we already have?
We have to continue on the protocol that we already have. We must remember that after all this has happened, which led to that meeting in Barbados last Sunday, there has not been one COVID virus positive case on any of the ship up till now. It is just a fear. We've had gastroenteritis on it. We've had upper respiratory tract infection. But so far, there hasn't been not even one case in a cruise ship in the region. And so we have to rely on that type of science, because if you're going to block ships when there is no reasons for doing so, the countries in the region are going to head into a whole new set of problems. and you don't want that to happen. The way things are going now, the restrictions is not really advised that we should do restrictions and so on. But that argument is a policy one that governments would have to take, and I'll leave them to take that decision. As technocrats, my job is to provide them with the scientific data and allow them to make that decision. And so far, there has not been one diagnosed case of COVID on any of the tourist ship that has traversed our waters here. However, our protocol still follows. Every ship that comes, we do the health declaration. We ensure that we satisfy with the health status of the passengers aboard the ship and use that to make a decision as to whether to allow them to disembark or not.
Okay. Let's take a quick break and come back inside. This is To The Point. We're talking coronavirus, COVID-19. Keep it locked to Classic and the GBN.
Think of Grenville Cooperative Credit Union, what comes to mind? A reliable financial institution that has stood the test of time. Maybe you think about the convenience and quality financial service they provide. Do you think about their readiness to help you retire, achieve your academic goals, build your dream home, buy the piece of land or the elegant car? Or maybe the convenience of their different locations, Jubilee Street in Grenville, the sub-office at Belmont Estate, or the new outlet on Lucas Street in St. George's in the Derek Sylvester building. Maybe you always consider how they're always a phone call away. 442-8602 or 438-4228. They're also online, www.grencu.org. No matter what comes to mind, remember, Grenville Cooperative Credit Union is the best place to save and to borrow, working with you to make your brighter tomorrow.
Francis Urias Peters. To really know who I am, you must look at the plays that I've written over the past 30 years, because they reflect hard work, discipline, and my inner beliefs. Now, these values were shaped by my earlier bringings, because I was always curious about my roots and my identity as a Caribbean man. Now, I'm a good listener, and K105 has always been a great source of education and entertainment. Now, while the station name may have changed over the years, it has always provided valuable information which enabled me as a playwright to document and to celebrate our history, our behavior, and our achievements. K105 is my choice. It's the national station.
Welcome back to The Point. We are speaking with Acting Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Francis Martin, and just getting the latest updates as it relates to coronavirus and COVID-19. There's a question on the WhatsApp that brought a memory back, but I'll ask this question first. Any plans for instituting a protocol for public transportation should there be an outbreak in Grenada?
This not just public transport, but mass gatherings. Yeah, that's what it is. It's not public transport, but in the event of a disease of an infectious nature that has high infectious rates, those were taken into consideration and is part of our influenza, our pandemic plan. If it comes to that point where we need to make that decision, we will make that decision, and it will not just be for buses or transport, it will be for mass gatherings. So you're talking about intercol, you're talking about school, you're talking about church. That's how you have to think about it.
So what you're saying is watch Intercall on TV?
Or go to church at home.
Okay, fair enough. The question also brought back a memory of reports of some nationals, I believe they were Chinese nationals, that were transported on a bus that usually does public transportation, but he was, operating privately at the time. He transported them around, I think, the island, and then they left, and people were concerned about the further spread about that bus.
It's very critical that as citizens of our country, we stop associating Chinese people with COVID-19. This is racist. This is not the case. This is not about Chinese people. It is about people who live in China and people who have traveled to or in transit through China. That's what it is. Because if you're going to do this, the amount of spread that is happening in the United States now, are we going to say Americans are spreading it to us as well? So we have to stay away from this as responsible people and public health experts. We do not use nationalities because this is not what it is. As it is right now, yesterday or so, there is over 1,500 new cases of corona in the world, and only 100 and something is from China. So right now, there are more infections outside of China than there are infections inside of China. So this is not about Chinese people. It's about an epidemic that is going on, a virus that is affecting us, and we all have to do what we have to do to protect ourselves. Because if you ask me, right now, the risk of infection is highest among Americans than among Chinese. So, what are you going to do?
Stay away from everybody. I'm kidding. I'm spilling them out as they come about. Yesterday, I also saw reports that scientists have identified 2 strains of the COVID-19, one more serious than the other.
Right. I have seen that report as well. I am continuing the search to authenticate whether this is the case. If that is the case, I am not surprised, because that is how viruses behave. This is one reason why HIV is the way it is, because as you know, or maybe you don't know, there is also 2 strains of HIV. It is called HIV-1 and HIV-2, and one is more virulent than the other. HTLV, which very, very common in our society here today, about 60% of our people in this country have HTLV-1. It also has 2 strains, HTLV-1 and HTLV-2. Herpes simplex 1, herpes simplex 2. So coronavirus having a 1 and a 2 is a normal in virology. That happens all the time when viruses split, and hence the reason I am not surprised of this finding at all. But of course, I'm looking into the science and ensure that if CDC authenticate this, then of course the world will now have to deal with a COVID-1 and COVID-2.
Okay. At this point, let's open the phone lines, 435-2041. The phones have been ringing, which means there are a few people calling. So let's keep our questions, comments, queries, concerns to 2 minutes or less so that we can field as many questions as possible. You can also pose your questions on the WhatsApp, the Facebook page, and the YouTube channel, and I will relay them to Doc for you. So let's get our first phone call. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello. Yes. Good morning. I'm thankful for your personnel who is talking about the corona, but I came in slightly late, so I'll ask the question that I need answers to. One, what happens with the people? Flights coming from, say, for instance, England, America, Italy. How are the people? Are they tested at the airports in which they're departing, and also are they tested on the plane, and are they tested on arrival in Grenada? That's one. Two, I also want to know. I think I heard you say that there are a few people in quarantine. Where is that hospital? I don't know whether you can disclose, but where are they?
Thank you, caller.
In regards the second question, it's easiest to say to answer the second one, and that is we do not have a single quarantine site. We have multiple sites because quarantine is dependent on the circumstances of that particular traveler. So we have multiple sites for that, and I think the caller will understand that I cannot give out that information. I hope the caller will understand that. Secondly, as it relates to persons leaving Italy, Great Britain, I can make some general statements, and that is some countries and some airports, they are doing exit screening or entry screening, which means checking persons' temperatures and what have you. These facilities don't do testing for the COVID. They do screening, so they look for fevers mostly. Here in Grenada, what we do, every flight that comes to the country, we look at the advanced passenger listing. So even before the flight gets to Grenada, we have an idea who is coming from where. If they are coming from a country where we have our extended surveillance, the next thing we check is how long have they left that country. And if they have left that country more than 14 days ago, we allow them to disembark and land. If they left their country less than 14 days ago, when they get to Grenada, we pull them off the flight, check their temperatures. If they have a fever or symptomatic, we take them to isolation. If they are fine, no fever, no cough, then we take them to quarantine. So that's what we do here in Grenada. And just before you go on, I thought I might have heard you say that the Prime Minister donated 20 million, but it's not 20 million, it's 2 million.
Yes, so 2 million. Yeah, there's a question too, so I wanted
because
to...
I was happy when I heard 20 million. I mean, I would love 20 million.
Mr. PM, I apologize. Yes, 2 million. Right. There's a question on WhatsApp. Doc, 2 cruise ships were coming into our port. One docked, the other turned back. Are you aware, and is it turned back for our safety? Again, is treading on my ethics and morals as a physician, but I understand the sensitivity, so I will answer in the best way I can. And the answer I will give is, I am aware that that ship returned to Grenada. I am aware that they have since left, and I can categorically state the reason for the ship returning had absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19. There was a situation that needed addressing ashore. It was a situation that needed urgent medical attention to save someone's life, but it had absolutely nothing to do with COVID. I had a direct communication with the physician to physician, and we shared information. He understood why I was concerned, and he was happy enough to give me all the necessary details that I needed to know so that I am comfortable that that patient can come ashore. That had absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19. Okay. It's easy to ban mass gatherings, yes, but are we planning to ban all public transportation, or are you working on a protocol that would enable public transportation to be available but under special guidelines?
Not in that details. As a matter of fact, when we look at what's happening around the world, it is seeming that countries should focus. It doesn't make sense trying to focus on prevention anymore, because that virus will hit. Because if closing borders could stop it, then it would not have mushroomed the way it has. The focus now should be on how do we test people and treat them. That is where the focus has to be in our sub-region, because we can't, it's not economically feasible to stop any more things and avoid travels and so on. It's not working. So countries are focusing now on testing and treating, building your capacity to mitigate the effects of that virus hitting your country.
Okay. Back to the phone lines. Good morning. Good morning. I lost that caller. There is a question on the WhatsApp. What about the boats that go to Trinidad and other Caribbean countries and return to Grenada? Are there people in the health sector to check them when they return with other persons from other countries?
Absolutely correct. The protocol for nautical health declaration is just consistent across the board. So they get checked by our health personnel, and I also we also have to remember our customs officers. In some instances, very small ship, the custom officers might go onto the ship as well. So we are in close communication with them and getting them trained and resourced to be able to assist us in that process as well. Because we have to be honest, we don't have enough health personnel to check every single ship or every single yacht that docks every single port in Grenada. But of course, we're working with them and have made contingency plans to ensure that we have the best efficiency as we can. And one example, and I'm just giving that as an example, in an effort to be able to adequately assess all yachts, we have decided that, for example, custom clearance for all yachts would be at one marina.
Okay.
So we channel everybody through that marina. We put a health officer there. We check them, and then they can go whichever bay or whatever it is they want to go. Yeah.
Okay, lost that caller too. There's a question on the WhatsApp. Is it 20? It's $2 million. We corrected that. It's $2 million. The question is, would the allocation include the consultancy of the newly appointed Dr. Mitchell? Karuna Zah?
Zah. Well, I'll be honest with you. You see, the finance part of things, I don't know the finance part of things. I believe it should. It may, but to get the details as to, to my mind, what I am mostly interested in is getting equipment, getting respirators, getting, the personal protective equipment, getting gloves and so on. That is what I am mostly concerned about. And I think, to my mind, this is where the money mostly will go into. But I would not be surprised if it's also used to pay salaries for, let me not say that, because I don't like saying what I don't know.
Right.
I honestly like, when I speak, I like to speak out of an area of facts, and I'm not a person that speaks out of when I don't know.
Okay, understood. Good morning.
Good morning, Citizen Welsh. Greetings unto your guest, Citizen Martin. Listen, Doc, I agree with you. If you know what you're talking about, say nothing. Listen, couple of things here. You mentioned that new equipment. I'm happy that you cleared up that question, Citizen Welsh, that I posed relative to the interval for testing, after hearing that it can happen in 4 hours. And in Trinidad is being done by CAFA between 24 and 28, but 48. I'm happy that was cleared up, Doc. But you described the machine by name. What was it again? The
PCR?
Abbreviations?
PCR.
TCR. Well, can you break that down for us, please? Some of us like to know the meaning of these, what these words really stand for, so to speak.
Polymerized chain reaction.
Pardon that again?
Say it again.
Polymerized chain reaction.
Great. I will record that. The other thing is we've heard spoken about a hazmat suit. Can you define that too? And there is another one. Well, PPE is easy, but I think you should, when you make these abbreviations and so on, you should spell them out so that people can understand and get it crystal clear. The second thing is this, Doc. Listen to news here, there, and everywhere around the world. I've heard that in certain countries, they're literally, quote unquote, fumigating. Has any conditions been considered for doing that here in the event that, and God forbid, that this thing reaches us? Some of us fear that but it will come. There's no way about it. I don't know, see what they worry about making up. Listen, you know that in 1970, the second half of 1917 to 1920, 21, there were about, after the war, where 40 million plus died. Some 50 million conservative estimates passed away. These are the things we had to expect. But, Doc, please tell us if any consideration has been given to fumigation and if it would make sense or not. Thank you very much, and do have a nice day. Continue the good job, my dear brother.
Thank you. All right, PPE is personal protective equipment. And in some instances, it is used interchangeably with hazmat suits because they kind of do the similar protection to person's protection. So in some instances they're used intermittently or I suppose hazmat is more for chemicals, for toxic, for exposure to toxins and chemicals and what have you, whereas the PPE is a protection for infections and that sort of thing. So they all function the similar way. So PPE means personal protective equipment. As it relates to fumigation, we have not considered and have had a discussion on fumigation yet, We have had the discussion on the use of sodium hypochlorite for spraying down and decontaminating people who have been exposed or treating patients. The other thing is, because we are living in the tropics and everywhere is so aerated and breezy and so on, that is an advantage to us in the sense that some of those things they can easily. So, for example, it is recommended that if someone has cough and cold, they sit in an open area where the breeze is able to blow through, and that in itself helps to prevent and protect people in the instance. So, the answer is we have not considered fumigating yet, but everything is on the table because we really don't know how the virus will behave when it gets here. When it gets here, it's a fluid situation. We'll have to try and deal with it as the need arises.
Okay. Viewers and listeners, we are joined by Dr. Mitch. Hold on. Yes, sorry. Dr. Mitchell, was it Corona Czar?
Oh, no.
That's how the commenter posted it, and I like it, the Corona Czar.
I kind of like it, so it's kind of sexy.
Doc, thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead, Ms. D. Thank you so much for joining us. From your point of view, being put in charge of which committee is it again? Remind me.
Coordination.
Right. Tell me some of the things that you will be putting in place as we prepare for the eventuality of its arrival.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, let me say good morning to your listenership. You go far and wide, okay?
Yes.
And we are on national television.
Yes.
Good morning to everyone out there. Do I have to look into the camera? I've become disused.
Yes. Anyway, you feel comfortable.
To being on air. Good morning to everyone out there, and my humblest of apologies for arriving late.
We know it's busy time.
I must say that I was listening to the program on my way, and Dr. Martin is doing a fantastic job at that. And I wonder whether or not you really needed me. So good morning, and good morning, citizens Rollo. I heard the last questions there, and persons like that we need to be preaching the positive word out there as well. Partnership is a crucial element in this whole thing. Suffice to say, and to address the question that you asked me, in terms of the coordination, I've been asked to just come on board to help, if you want to call it synchronize, to help consolidate what the ministry has already been doing. And they've been doing a fantastic job, rated among the best response in the sub-region. And basically what we're going to be doing and concentrating on is 5 strategic lines that sort of like encapsulate what has been doing already. I am just there to basically streamline them and to ensure that things are, if you want to call it, fast-tracked, and that sort of thing. That's basically going to be my role. And if you don't mind, I could sort of like enunciate, I could mention what these 5 lines are.
Yes, please.
Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
Very grateful. And while you're doing so, there's a question. Now that you have arrived, can you give us a breakdown of the government's $2 million thrust into our fight?
So you want me to go delve into that directly?
So the 5 and then the breakdown of the 2 mil.
Right. So let me answer the last question first, because I don't know how this 2 million is going to be exactly broken down. You know,
so that should answer that question.
We have not allocated $500,000 for this, $250,000 for this, and in so doing, I would like to address the issue of my salaries. You know what it is? Listen, I am here to serve. And to serve in the best way possible. Money is going to, and hopefully going to come because of my expertise, but that is the least of my worries right now. And someone asked if out of the 2 million I'll be paid. Listen, that is not, Dr. Martin, you answered that right. I don't know too, and money is not the only thing in the world. The thing, is about taking care of our nation, etc. But in terms of our 5 strategic lines, first and foremost, we want to make sure that people are aware, people get the best message, people get the scientific message, people get the real message about the coronavirus. So pillar number 1 is public education, like we're trying to do here, like Dr. Martin and the team from Health Promotion, etc. We have assistance from SU as well, has been doing public education and awareness of the virus, beating back on a lot of the negatives and hype that this virus has occasioned. This is really, really, really number one. And we're slowly getting sort of like making serious headway in that, because there was a frenzy, and there's still a frenzy out there about it, but I think the message is coming true about that. So that is really, really important for us, and that is pillar number one. Education, awareness about the virus, how it behaves, how it reacts, etc. Pillar number two is surveillance and monitoring. So, and that we have been doing in an excellent way. I think Dr. Martin explained some of the protocols and how we manage persons who are coming from what we call hot areas, etc., how we've been managing that, our quarantine protocols, etc. We've been doing that, and we've been doing that very well in an excellent way. I want to sort of like, hats up to the folks who've been doing that. The third pillar and the third strategic line is a question of building partnership and stakeholder involvement. I am of the concerted view that the ministry alone cannot really confront what is going on in relation to the virus. I mean, too many things are happening about it, and that is because it is new as well. So there are lots of speculations and that out there. So we need everybody on board. We need all the partners on board to be able to confront that. My experience coming out of CHIKV, Ebola, and Zika taught me that the best way to do that is getting all our partners on board, because they reach their constituents much better than us. So I will be reaching out to all of the workplaces, and I've already started doing that. Yesterday I had a fantastic meeting with Customs, I think. Yes, Customs. Excellent meeting with them. Met with about 40-something workers. We delved into a lot of areas, a lot of questions, and we appealed to them really to ensure that they can they take on the responsibility, not only at the workplace but at their homes as well. And that is one of the messages that we'll be driving home. Partnership, stakeholder involvement, because we need to confront this as a team, as a nation, going forward. The fourth line of strategic involvement, or line, as you want to dub it, is targeting our most vulnerable population. Based on the data coming out of from the experts, CDC and PAHO, the World Health Organization, the virus is obviously reaping havoc among a certain group of persons, particularly the elderly and most vulnerable, persons who have what we call comorbidities. What are comorbidities? Persons who are already sort of like sick and are having problems with their health. Persons with chronic kidney failure, with chest infections, with cardiovascular, in other words, heart problems. Persons with cancers, persons who are sick generally. Those are the persons that the virus is affecting mostly. So what we are going to do is to ensure that these persons are in their best possible state of health. That is what we're trying to do. And we have already had conversations with for example, Dr. Sean Charles, who is directly responsible for our DMOs, and our chief community health nurse, to ensure that there is visitation within the homes. We've sort of like identified them already, and to get people up to the best possible health that they can at this time. In other words, if you have a chest infection, let's try and cure it. Let's try and deal with it as efficiently as we can before the virus arrives. Right. So we're concentrating on that. We are also strategizing to not everybody, not every elderly person in Grenada is in a home. So house visits, we're planning on ramping that up as well, so as to put persons who are vulnerable in the best possible condition to be able to withstand the virus. So that is a key pillar of our strategic line. And the fifth one is basically trying to build on our capacity, our medical fraternity, our staff, and our physical capacity where equipment and so forth and isolation and so forth is concerned. So that is our 5 strategic lines. And I'm sure a lot of the things that was discussed already here sort of like fall in within those lines, but we're just like streamlining them and making sure that efforts are placed to ramping them up so that we can better prepare as a nation. But, in conclusion, listen, this is our response. This is not led by the Ministry of Health. Every Grenadian has to now sort of like play their role. The second question, I think I answered it already.
Yeah.
The money part, the money.
In the time frame between now and not if but when the virus gets here, what needs to be done? I know you pointed out the 5 pillars, but what specifically has to be in place to ensure that we are 100% ready? I'm not sure if we'll get there, but you know what I mean. Ensure that we are ready for when COVID decides.
Well, as ready as we possibly can, as ready as is humanly possible.
So what else needs to be done?
Well, we're ramping up the education. Your program, I'm sure, is going to assist with that. We have redoubling our efforts to reach out to schools, to workplaces, to demystify really the information around the virus and put people in a better position to deal with it. It does not make sense, in my view, getting all hyped up. The cooler you are is the better we are able to confront this. And so providing information out there as to what you do at the household level, what you do at the workplace level, etc., is what we are going to be ramping up. We already have, I think, surveillance and monitoring and thing. We have that basically covered nicely. We're going to reach a stage that, as Dr. Martin was mentioning earlier, that the issue of quarantine and so forth would be a thing of the past. You know what I mean? If the virus comes here and we don't minimize spread, so many people will be coming down with it. That is a question of you staying home and isolating yourself. That is a kind of self-quarantine, if you get it. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, I was not listening when I'm sure Dr. Martin, you would have spoken about what the numbers in terms of who has been affected and how they've been affected. Yeah. Right, 80% of persons would have mild respiratory illness, just like we had during the Zika outbreak, where persons didn't even know that they had Zika, because you have a little headache, you have a little fever, you shake that off, and the next day you're okay. This is going to be happening in the corona outbreak as well. So that people who are sick and so forth, at the beginning, if you want to, we're going to be saying and distributing information as to how to isolate yourself, how to, maybe more importantly, don't pass on that virus to a sick elderly person or a sick person in your house. That is probably going to be one of the most important things, because strategically, as I said, and has been reported, those are the people who are going to succumb from the virus the most. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is where we need to ensure that persons understand, because you're going to be getting the virus, but not to pass it on to those who are in a vulnerable position, not to be able to withstand them. So be going there with that. At the elderly homes, for example, we intend to teach the workers there about how the virus is transmitted. And I hope they are listening. Mm-hmm. And so not to pass it on, the caregivers not to pass it on to the elderly. So that is a crucial sort of like line of attack in trying to curtail that. If we can do that, I am confident that our the rate at which this virus would affect our population would be lessened. So that is crucial. But how are we going to do that? How are we going to do that is by building on the third pillar, which is building partnership and stakeholder involvement. If everyone comes on board and if everyone helps with the education and the spreading of the information, then we get a message out there. Not everybody listens to your wonderful program. So the stakeholders are actually very, very important in this. And so we want to get to them. We want to get at that micro level so that the information can be passed on. And then, as I said, the fourth one, I spoke to it already, ensuring that subgroup is as best positioned to be able to withstand the virus. And, ladies and gentlemen out there, we have a social responsibility to care and to protect our elderly. Those are the ones who worked hard in their own ways to build this nation and to put it where we are. So we have a social responsibility to do that. And the fifth one, of course, is not so much an internal matter, but ensuring that we are in the best possible position with our frontline workers to confront this. I know that, for example, Dr. Sean Charles had a meeting with the DMOs, of which I was present. They were wondering what I was doing there, but I clarified that very, very, nicely, and calling them to ensure that they play their important role in terms of ensuring that the elderly is taken care of, etc., etc. And of course, ensuring that we get all the possible equipment and supplies that we possibly can, which we are working on, to be able to treat with those who are whose defense mechanisms don't allow them to withstand the virus. So we're building that capacity.
Okay. Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Hi, good morning again to Blossom, you and your followers, and Doctors Martin and Dr.
Mitchell.
The information is very, very useful, and the education is indispensable. But I am still very concerned about public transportation. We don't want to create unnecessary hype, but public transportation is one of the means through which things like that can spread rapidly. And I think that this is the time, Dr. Martin said we don't have any specifics, where we have to put together specific protocols for public transport. You don't have to do it yourselves. This is a big problem. Your hands are full. There is civil society. There is NADMA. I mean, if we're going to have a pay-first system with the buses, whatever we're going to do, but life has to continue. People will continue to have to move. And it's important that there be a system in place. If it's a protocol for sanitizing the buses when they get in the terminus every time they come, if there are napkins, special napkins or wipes that the drivers should have, this is how to be planned for. We can't wait until it happens and then we're running around helter-skelter. So I think you should enlist other groups who can help you to handle things like this, and you'll approve them in the end. But to me, your hands are full. You're trying to do everything from that centralized, point. But there are many things that will be left undone, and these little things are the ones that can spell the difference between success and failure in containing this thing in event, God forbid, that we have an outbreak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. It's a worthwhile thought. Very simple things that people can do. As a matter of fact, bus drivers can make their buses more favorable if they themselves get hand sanitizers and have it. And so I think it's a nice idea.
No, beautiful idea. Listen, the bus operators who probably go that route would be the most popular ones.
Buses.
So when I speak about stakeholder involvement, that's the granular level that I'm going down. Take care of your constituents. Take care of the people that you interact with, that you serve. Workplaces would benefit. In other words, if you have a whole set of persons falling sick, then your work suffers. Your productivity suffers. You know what I mean? So the more you take care of your workers, the more the bus drivers, for example, take care of the passengers, is the more money they collect in the bag when the day comes. So it is incumbent on everybody sort of like to participate in this, and I can assure you the way this is, if one bus driver say, listen now, we sanitize in the door as part of our fight against it. People are gonna like this.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
Well, big up GBN on that note. They were handing out hand sanitizers yesterday, so big up management.
Good stuff.
One question on the WhatsApp: is it true that one of the Italians who were quarantined have since left before the 14 days quarantine was up had the virus? Is it true that one of them had the virus? Has the virus?
This is absolutely false. None of them had any fever, none had coughing or sneezing. And the science of it all indicates that if they are not having any symptoms, you do not test them, because most likely you'll have a false, the result will be inaccurate.
Do you know whether the virus is in Trinidad?
I can say the virus is not in Trinidad, and that's simply not because I have first-hand knowledge of it, but because I am in very close communication with partners, chief medical officers in Trinidad, with CARPHA and with the director of CARPHA, and I asked her that specific question yesterday, and her very clear answer was no.
What I can say was there was a report of a Italian national, I believe, a Canadian, that they tested for the virus on Tuesday, and they were awaiting results, but he wasn't showing all the symptoms of the virus. I think he had a respiratory illness.
Right.
So they tested him out of an abundance of caution. That was a report earlier this week from Trinidad.
Okay.
But
Blossom, everything that looked like a respiratory virus now
I agree.
is corona. Corona is really popular without even being around.
Where did it go? How soon do you think the scientists would find a cure for the virus?
I cannot say how soon, because these viruses, just like HIV, they change so rapidly that this is where the rubber really hits the road when it comes to scientific testing. So I really can't comment on how soon. I hope in a couple months they should be able to do so, but we're 30 years into HIV and still haven't found the cure yet. So,
right. Passengers are not checked prior to boarding plane in London Gatwick Airport. It is irresponsible to say we can't prevent the virus from coming to Grenada. We should do our utmost to limit the impact. It is a small country.
The second part of the comment, yes, we have to do what we can to limit the impact if it comes into a country. But I believe that despite all our efforts, despite everything we do, the virus will show up.
Okay.
On that, yesterday in that meeting with the folks at the customs, I was telling them that this virus is now in the U.S. We have literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Grenadians who live in the U.S. in different cities, possibly where the current outbreak is taking place. They all come to either Miami or JFK from wherever they come to take the plane to come here. We cannot sort of like stop and would not be screening every Grenadian. It is virtually impossible, if you understand what I'm saying. So it is most likely one of our own that had a trip planned months ago, that is coming from an area that has interacted with someone in an area, say for example in California or wherever the Washington, wherever the outbreak is, that is coming home, does not feel sick, comes through as usual. It's a family member, and when they come here, they come down with a cold. They come down with cold symptoms. Boom. Okay, they start to feel sick, or they're not even sick enough to be hospitalized because it might be a young, strong person, and that is where sort of like grandma at home starts getting sick, or someone who is not so well at home becoming sick, and that's what we spread. By the time we catch ourselves out, that thing is spreading. So that kind of scenario is what I think is possibly
most likely might happen. The elderly folks who are the ones that will suffer most from this, they're at home right now. They're separated from us. The younger people are going to be the ones that would bring this thing home to the elderly folks, and it's really unfortunate.
Because we're outside gallivanting.
Absolutely.
We're not taking plane and thing.
And it wouldn't affect you because you're young and strong.
Yeah. Well, thanks. As we wrap up, anything that needs to be reiterated? There's someone asking what we can eat to build our immune system. Brightly colored foods. I
always end my programs by saying this. I always end by saying, over the few hundreds of years, most of the public health threats and most of the things that have devastated human beings on the face of the earth has had to do with hygiene. Either cleaning yourself or cleaning your environment. And every time we meet one of those threats, we tell people, clean your environment. And instead of taking that advice of cleaning your environment, we get caught up in a whole set of useless conversations. Here, Corona is here. And Corona has to do with cleaning yourself, washing your hands. That's what it has to do with, washing your hands and still we're caught up with all this nonsense just because people don't want to clean themselves.
Point.
How else can I say it?
No, my message, well said, Dr. Martin. My message out there is to let's calm down. Let's calm down.
It's
yes,
hard
it's
to stay
serious.
calm, Doc, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know, but I'm here. Let's be calm, and let's be real. Let's focus on what needs to be done. Let's get our people informed about the realities of the virus. Let's take responsibility for educating our folks. I'm making a concerted appeal out there for everyone who is in managerial position, who has responsibility for workers, for homes, etc. Yeah, to get abreast as to what could be done. You can always reach out to me and to the team at the ministry to get as much information as you possibly can in confronting this virus. This is led by the Ministry of Health, but it is a responsibility of all really patriotic Grenadians to minimize what is happening there in relation to the virus. So that's my concerted appeal.
Let me end by giving people advice on how to prevent the virus from attacking and how to boost your immune system. First of all, you focus on cleaning your hands and covering your mouths and coughing and hand etiquette and cough etiquette. Everybody knows this. We need to concentrate on that. But the absolute way to boost your immune system is to eat bright colored foods. Those are the foods that actually boost your immune system and helps you to get the proper enzymes to make those cells work in a really good fashion. And I'd like to give a little joke here and say it's not colorful foods. So don't tell me you put saffron in the oil dog. It's not not colorful foods.
You can put other things.
It's bright colored foods. So the green, the orange, the red, your pawpaw, and those are the things you do. And I say this to people all the time, eat the right foods. And even when I say this, these people will still turn around and say, Doc, tell me a supplement I could buy. Right. You see, again, it's the concept in people's mind that the responsibility lies somewhere else and someplace else. Right. The responsibility is not in supplements. It's in you washing yourself and eating the foods that you have to do. And we need to keep saying this to people.
Blossom, before we go off the show, yesterday I ended up meeting with Customs. A very nice question was asked. One of the guys asked me, Doc, so we know that alcohol preparations of more than between 60 and 90% is good to kill the virus. I said, hold on. I think I know where you're going with that. Whether or not drinking fast codes or rivers, was going to assist. No, the virus basically attacks the respiratory system, and those beverages don't go in our lungs. Okay? So that is not going to help. That is not going to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll stop shaking.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much to Dr. Martin and Dr. Mitchell for coming through on To The Point. Brenda is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. That's my time for the end of the day. I'll be back with you bright and early tomorrow, God willing. Until then, stay safe, practice good hygiene, enjoy the rest of your Thursday.